Hello, everybody. It's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course, I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, last week marked the kickoff for our Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebrations, and we talked all about animated films, all stemming from East Asian production houses. This week is all about Asian American stories. Some of these are fictional. I've got a real life tale in here, but they're all really compelling, really excellently made films, and I think that you will definitely find something that you'll enjoy. If not, make sure that you check out one of our video services. We have three. Those are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. Together, they have thousands and thousands and thousands of film selections on them. You will 100% find a story that you will be drawn to, I guarantee it. And of course, anything from those services is for use entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin card. So, without any further ado, I want to go ahead and jump right into the Recs. I hope you'll stick around. Okay, my first selection for this week is available on both Hoopla and Canopy, and that is 2020's Driveways. I absolutely adored this movie. When it first came out, I absolutely heard nothing about it. And of course, it came out in 2020. All of our minds were on many, many things at that time. Probably not necessarily small independent films, but I'm so glad that I actually watched this because it was such a gem, and it's heartfelt, it's warm, it's just a really, really fantastic film. So in Driveways, we are following a young, lonely boy. His name is Cody. He travels to a new town with his mother, Kathy, and they are temporarily living in his recently deceased aunt's home. Their intention is to clean up the home, get it, in usable shape, and then sell it and move on. But while they're going through this process, Cody ends up developing this really phenomenal bond with his neighbor Dell, who is an older widower and veteran, and it's just a really, really fantastic film that is all about these unexpected connections. And I think in a time where we're all sort of trying to renew connections with other people, this movie is sort of that perfect sort of resonant bite. It's one of those stories that you 100% feel. You get that desire to bond with people, the connections to others that you maybe haven't had, and it's really, really, really well done. When it came out, I guess again, I had totally missed this film. It received tons of really, really positive reviews. The acting in it, the storyline, especially the acting of the older widower, who is played by Brian Dennehy. This is actually Dennehy's very, very last film, and that was made mention of quite a bit in all of the critical reviews, mainly because if there was a way to sort of cap off a phenomenal acting career, everyone thought that this was definitely it, and I will say it's a charming performance. So one of those things that I find is kind of a trope in films where we're talking about multi-generational connection and bond is that the older generation, there's almost always a character that's like curmudgeonly and sort of grumpy, and yes, underneath all of that, they're very warm-hearted, but you have to get past that period of defrosting before any kind of bond can form. But that's just not what happens in this. This is all about two unexpected kindred spirits meeting. Cody is quiet, he's introverted, he's not rambunctious, he's not, always like super excitable. He's just still. And there are a lot of kids that are like that, and we don't necessarily see them on screen. I mean, it's just not an archetype that gets expressed. Or if it is, it's always like this deeply troubled character or someone who has angst like nobody's business. But he's he's not that. He's not that archetype. And then he finds this other quiet man, and they're both, looking to find that sort of friendship, and they really fill the spaces for one another, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I just absolutely adored it, and it really really made me smile throughout most of the development of this bond. And the way that they each played off of one another was really wonderful. The acting in this is exceptional, whether we're talking about Cody's mother Kathy, who, if anyone is going to go through a period of a bit of a thaw, it's her. But you've got Kathy's character sort of trying to figure out what relationship she had with her deceased sister, how that relates to how she's feeling about this home that they're suddenly in, that she knows she intends to give up, how she's relating to her son having quote unquote normal relationships with kids his age, and how, they're interacting with this older neighbor that she doesn't know at all. I mean, her character to Cody's, to the other people that they meet besides Dell. I mean, it's just really well performed, and I loved all of the little blips from that you would find in any small town. Like everybody knows everyone else, everybody kind of knows everyone's business, so when you have an outsider coming in, it's always going to be a big deal. And I will say, I was really interested in the fact that while Cody and Kathy are of Asian descent, a lot of the story isn't necessarily about that. Of course, there are little pieces of that because that's just how the world is, but it really is primarily about the connections, the relationships, the development of finding place. And I don't know, I adored this movie. And if you're looking for a family story, if you're looking for a story about multi-generational relationships, if you are looking for a film about families, this is one that you absolutely have to watch. It's actually my pick of the week, and I highly recommend it. You won't regret it. Okay, my next recommendation is available on Canopy, and that is for 2016's Forever Chinatown. This one is a short, sweet documentary all about a self-taught 81-year-old artist. His name is Frank Wong, who has spent the last several decades of his life attempting to recreate his childhood hometown, which is San Francisco's Chinatown. As someone who is very much a fan of creating miniatures, this movie made me geek out in so many places. He does beautiful work. Let me just say that right off the bat. If you are anyone who's interested in making miniatures or models, dioramas, if you are a D&D-er or any RPG board master, you absolutely need to check this out, just because I think the scale of what this man has done is absolutely mind-boggling. He describes his work as a sort of composite of memory and desire. And the result is honestly astonishing. These little glimpses of old school Chinatown in San Francisco are absolutely painstakingly put together. The detail, the skill that is clearly required to put these things together. I just loved watching this. So you've got on one level just this tribute to a craftsman. That alone is enough for me to watch something like this. I love watching films where we really get into the nitty-gritty of a person's process, where we just get to see examples of someone's work developing and how, and he worked on this for 4 decades. This is a project that has lasted decades. And you can see the development of craft as well. And I really thought that was amazing. But beyond that, it's also Frank's story itself. So Frank knows that he's losing pieces of his memories. You know, that happens to everyone, but that was a concern that sort of, spurred this whole thing. Like, he wanted so desperately to cling on to these memories that he felt the need to make something concrete. And listening to him talk, listening to others talk, there were many moments when, in between the absolute geek out uh, that I was having every couple minutes looking at different pieces that he'd worked on, where I just found myself getting really emotional listening to him talk about memory and listening to him sort of reconnect to people from his past, places from his past, all by working on this art, which, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? And so we're watching this visual representation of what art is supposed to be for us as individuals and for others. And I don't know, it just really moved me. And again, it's a very quick watch, a very, very quick watch. And if you are not someone who's interested in arts or crafting or design, it does, I don't think that matters. I think it really, at the heart of it, is the story of what memory means to us and how the importance of that meaning can drive us to do things like this 4-decade project. Um, so yeah, if you are a fan of stories about artisans and their projects, 100%, you definitely need to watch this. Whether you're a minis fan or not, like whether you do miniature work, whether you're a painter, whether you are a filmmaker, whether you are a crafter, a crocheter, you anybody involved in those kinds of projects, you 100% should watch this. But I think anyone who's interested in a story about, you know, genealogy as well would really find this interesting. That desire to reconnect with the past, the desire to make record of who we were, what we were doing, what the world around us at that time was like. I think that this is a really good fit too. So, make sure you take the time to check out Forever Chinatown on Canopy, because it is an exceptional watch. Super quick too. It's not it's a very short film. It's not even an hour. So, if you get the chance, available on Canopy, 2016's Forever Chinatown, you won't regret it. Okay, my final recommendation for this week is also available on Canopy, and this is 2014's Meet the Patels. This one's an interesting one. First off, I really enjoyed it. I did. It's a thoroughly entertaining film, but it's a little hard to categorize. It is described as, and I quote, an American romantic comedy documentary. I know what a romantic comedy is, and I know what a documentary is. I did not, however, know what a romantic comedy documentary was prior to watching this. I think I have a better handle on it now, but I'm still a little bit about some things. This is one of those movies that absolutely plays like a traditional rom-com in a lot of ways. So in Meet the Patels, we are primarily following Ravi Patel. He's a 30-year-old young man. He's this upcoming actor. He happens to be of Indian descent, and he's just coming out of a really devastating breakup with his girlfriend, Audrey. I only mention this because it is a big part of the storyline. Audrey happens to be this bubbly, red-headed white American girl. Robbie had never really explained the depth of his relationship with her to his parents, but he ends up deciding, in the wake of his devastation, to talk to his parents about going through sort of a matchmaking process to find happiness, because his parents were an arranged marriage. So, and they had, in his opinion, always been incredibly happy. And so he's going through this really fascinating process of an arranged marriage and meeting a ton of candidates. And it's interesting to watch the process of this happening and then sort of juxtapose it with all of these elements that he's missing from his previous relationship. And that's kind of what this documentary is all about. Sort of Ravi's relationship with his first partner, and then his relationship with his parents, and how he perceives their romance to be in comparison to his own. Uh, there are a lot of layers of there are a lot of layers to this, and I find it on a cultural level fascinating. Um, how he is very Western, of course, like most of us who are first or second generation are. Uh, but we also have these interesting connections to culture and sort of a fascination with it as well. And, you know, a lot of this documentary is hilarious, like different scenes and moments. And that's where my confusion comes in. Some of these bits feel almost scripted, I will say. Like it, and most documentaries definitely have a distance to them that this one does not. And I would say that that's, if you are someone who's like a strict fan of traditional documentaries, that this one might not work for you. But if you're just looking for a well-made movie that explores relationships, that explores cultural differences, that explores family, and that explores romance as well, this one is one to check out, because again, highly entertaining. I laughed out loud in so many moments, and not like the uncomfortable laughter that you sometimes feel when you're like in a fish out of water situation, but like there are definitely moments when Ravi is like, you have to laugh at this because this is just so intense and not expected. um and he's likable. That's the other thing. I really enjoyed following his journey through this process. I enjoyed his parents, and at no point do you ever necessarily feel like any tradition is being specifically like called out, but it definitely is like, it doesn't shy away from, these are very different practices than what we would consider the norm in the West. Not better, not worse, just incredibly different. And I liked that about this particular film. I really did, that it was just, it is what it is kind of presentation. So if you're looking for something that's fun, that's funny, that absolutely does have a romantic vibe to it, and it really does. And I don't want to give certain parts away. That's why I'm not like going in depth to specifically why I guess this is called a romantic comedy documentary. But it really, really is highly entertaining, and I strongly recommend you check it out. Again, that's 2014's Meet the Patels, available on Canopy. Excellent, excellent film. Okay, so those were my few picks for this week's installment. If you have any recommendations for films that explore the Asian American experience, whether they be documentaries or traditional movies, please, please, please comment with those below. I definitely am interested in watching more. If you have any recommendations for themes you'd like to see us explore as well, definitely comment with those. Always looking for help with that. And with that, I want to go ahead and close out this episode. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I adore putting these lists together, and it's always fun to explore our catalog for different movies. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye!